8 decades since the founding of this unique body. The UN Charter calls on us not just to prevent war, but to build peace, not just to defend rights, but to uphold the dignity of every human being. It challenges us to stand as good neighbors, uniting our strength so that generations to come inherit a world of justice, of progress, and of lasting freedom. Madam President, forces unleashed by history since the founding of the UN propelled this body forward. As decolonization advanced, the world began to return to its natural diversity. The membership of the United Nations quadrupled, and the organization's role and remit grew significantly. In the era of globalization, its agenda evolved even further. Development goals took center stage, even as climate change emerged as a shared priority. Trade acquired greater prominence, while food and health access were recognized as essential to global well-being. Where security was concerned, the UN undertook peacekeeping operations and promoted disarmament discussions. As a result, the UN became a natural platform to debate key global issues. Madam President, we must ask ourselves today, how has the UN lived up to expectations? And just look at the state of the world. There are two significant conflicts underway, one in Ukraine and the other in the Middle East, West Asia. Innumerable other hotspots don't even make the news. The slow progress of the SDG Agenda 2030 presents a sorry picture. On climate change, the reality is of recirculated commitments and creative accounting. If climate action itself is questioned, what hope is there for climate justice? When a once-in-a-century pandemic hits us, we saw open discrimination in access to vaccines and to travel. Energy and food security have been the first casualties of conflict and disruption, especially since 2022. Better off societies insulated themselves by having the first call. The resource-stressed ones scrambled to survive, only to hear sanctimonious lectures thereafter. When it came to trade, non-market practices gamed rules and regimes. The resulting concentration exposed the world to leveraging. On top of that, we now see tariff volatility and uncertain market access. As a result, de-risking is a growing compulsion, whether from limited sources of supply or over-dependence on a particular market. Economic concerns have other dimensions as well. Heightened technology control is one. The grip on supply chains and critical minerals is another. The shaping of connectivity is no less sensitive. Protection of key sea lanes has become a challenge. Restricting the evolution of a global workplace is an issue. Each makes a compelling case for more international cooperation, not less. But are we really headed in that direction? And where has the UN actually made a difference? Madam President, as members of the UN, we meet here as sovereign equals. That is not a formalism, but a recognition of the inherent diversity of our world. Understandably, we have different history, traditions, heritage, and culture. For them to coexist, for them to enrich each other, it is imperative that we foster understanding and respect. This will only happen when we resist political interference and economic pressures, when narratives are free of prejudice, when double standards are abjured, and when pluralism is truly appreciated. Madam President, Excellencies, while asserting our rights, we must also firmly face up to threats. Countering terrorism is a particular priority because it synthesizes bigotry, violence, intolerance, and fear. India has confronted this challenge since independence, having a neighbor that is an epicenter of global terrorism. For decades now, major international terrorist attacks are traced back to that one country. UN's designated lists of terrorists are replete with its nationals. The most recent example of cross-border barbarism was the murder of innocent tourists in Pahalgam in April this year. India exercised its right to defend its people against terrorism and brought its organizers and perpetrators to justice. Because terrorism is a shared threat, Madam President, it is essential that there is much deeper international cooperation. When nations openly declare terrorism a state policy,